So today we will be doing, or I will be doing the June opening lab. So this is something I used to do on my Patreon page monthly. I would offer subscribers a chance to send in opening questions, and once a month I answer them, make a video on them. Oh, music's so loud, thank you. Actually, I wanted to just pause the music for the opening lab because I feel like the opening lab is serious. The Twitch music is a little bit more casual. They don't quite mix. But yeah, this is something I've been doing monthly for patrons for a while, and now that ChessDojo has a Patreon page, we have decided to offer folks the chance to send in opening questions once a month. Actually, we're planning to do a couple things for patrons. One thing is that if you have like a game you want analyzed, and you subscribe at the $25 tier, you can get one of your games analyzed per month from your choice of sensei. We'll like make a video on it or cover it in like a game analysis stream. Hey Paspon, good to see you. But yeah, today we got some opening questions from patrons. I think we have like a good 5 or 6 questions. Maybe 4 or 5 questions, I think. And yeah, I'll just go through them one by one, give you guys my thoughts. I did a little bit of prep just to see what the questions were and try to organize my thoughts a little bit, but for the most part, we'll keep it pretty open. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, here we go. So, first question this month comes from Ian, who I know well, who's been a patron for many months. Shout out to Ian. And Ian is asking 1 e4, e6, 2 d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5. What's the best way for black to meet this opening line in ChessDojo's view? Yeah, definitely a big question for French players. Let's put it on the board. And when I was playing the French, this line was always a big question for me as well. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do here. Black has a number of options, actually, and I feel like maybe we should just go through the options. I can talk about some pros and cons, because they are all kind of playable, including the Rubinstein variation, but they all have their like advantages and disadvantages. Really bad time to get the leaves blown right by my window, but we'll just proceed. We'll just carry on. I don't even know how well can you guys hear the leaf blower on your ends. It's very loud for me. Feels like it's literally like right here. Maybe I'll give him a sec. Okay, great. Maybe I'll just clean my glasses here real quick. Usually doesn't last too long. Okay, so yeah, I think the move that I played for the most part was bishop e7 here, which I think is the most like French-like move. If you're just looking for a French type of position, I think bishop e7 is the way to go. And they're back. They're back. Hey, Sidious. Thanks for checking in on me. But we'll get to this one. There's a couple of other options for black here too. There's bishop b4. This is the McCutcheon variation. I would say this is the sharpest of the bunch. So if you're looking for like a really messy position, actually you want something complicated, I would go for bishop b4. Zero white usually goes e5. Black plays h6. And this exchange is not good for white because the dark squared bishop for black is just too strong of a piece in this position. So usually white goes back. I think bishop d2, bishop e3 is also a move. And what black ends up doing is taking and going knight e4 and playing this position, and then often taking on d2. And then we get this like really weird position where white has a lot of space, but white has weakened their structure on the queen side, and so this gives black some kind of long-term counterplay. Oh, d takes e is what Jesse plays. Oh, great, Jesse. Yeah, I wanted your opinion on this. What would you recommend in this position from black's point of view? Hey, thanks, Patient Chess, for subscribing. Oh, this is David. Sorry. For some reason, I thought Jesse was talking about himself in the third person point of view. Yeah, the other big option is d takes e4, which I should mention is a better version compared to, let's say, if black was to just take back here. Because in this position, white can play bishop g5, but it really isn't committed. Like if black plays knight d7 here, bishop g5 is not the move white plays. White usually just plays like knight f3, bishop d3, and then waits. So the fact that white is already committed to bishop g5 does make the kind of Rubinstein stuff a lot more pleasant for black. For instance, here after bishop e7, we're already putting pressure on white and kind of forcing white either to trade pieces, just kind of in black's favor in the French usually, or to lose some time and like move away with knight g3, where black is going to be totally fine. So the difference here after knight f6 is that white should not play bishop g5 here. White should actually just take this guy and force black either to get kind of a weird structure, let's say with g takes f6, or go queen takes f6, where the queen often just gets tempoed very quickly with bishop g5, which is kind of unpleasant. Oh, I'm sorry, the opening lab command is not working. Hold on, let me fix that. That's not my fault. That's on Moobot. Moobot has been slow lately. Oh, it didn't work. Wow. Alright, give me a sec, guys. Gotta set up this this command. Every month, ChessDojo will host an opening lab where patrons can send in opening questions to be covered on the stream. Support ChessDojo at patreon.com/ChessDojo. Okay, saved. Right, this is a bad option for black. Let's try the command. Sweet. All right, great. So the fact that white is committed to bishop g5 means this is actually a lot more playable. Knight d7 is the one move I haven't really played in the French, like or this variation I should say is the one I haven't played much. I think theoretically it's supposed to be pretty sound for black, because again black is going to be playing like h6 soon and then forcing white to trade off some pieces, and then black gets pretty decent chances of equalizing. I've played bishop e7 a couple times, which I think is a pretty interesting way to play as well. Now if white takes knight takes f6, then we take with the bishop, and this is really just fine for black. Like takes, queen takes f6, black just puts the bishop on b7, you play knight d7, you castle, you go c5, and everything is like absolutely fine. And basically white has just traded off too many pieces and black has no weaknesses, so no real issues here for black. So the only way for white to really fight for an edge in this position is to go bishop takes f6. And the point is that after black recaptures, white isn't going to take this one, is just going to develop and play for kind of like the light square attack with bishop d3. Black usually castles kingside here, and then white goes for like h4, knight g5, queen e2, queen d2, castling queenside, and white definitely gets some pretty serious attacking chances here. Yeah. Wait, so David, which one does Jesse play? I think he does this one, right? With bishop takes f6. I feel like I've seen some Jesse games in this line. Yeah. Actually, one of Jesse's videos on the French won me a game in this position. Because he showed a game that he played, and then it helped me in my own games. I'm not a huge fan of gf6. Yeah, it is playable, and if this is kind of like if this is your style, then it definitely is playable. Someone mentioned Morozevich. Yeah, I think this is kind of his pet line. I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, Patient Chess, but yeah, this one is really playable if you kind of like really kind of dynamic and active positions. I played this once against a pretty decent player, and I lost, and I had a pretty tough time, so I didn't love it. But yeah, I think for most of the people in the chat, like, you could definitely play it and have a good time. You just go b6, bishop b7, or a6, b5. This knight will have to move at some point, otherwise you'll play f5. You bring the other knight to f6, and I mean, you're basically playing like a Dutch Queen's Indian type of structure with like f5 and bishop on b7, and just trying to control this diagonal, and you get rook g8. Usually black is putting the queen eventually on d7 and castling queenside. Yeah, I don't love it for black. Like, I don't really trust it, as people like to say. But I do think it's playable. Like, if you're a French player and you want something adventurous, or you want to like play for the win, then I think this is definitely a really sharp system. So yeah, all of this stuff is basically playable, and it's really just a matter of which positions you are going to feel the most comfortable in. So for me, I always like the positions with bishop g5, bishop e7, though I didn't mind this line either with bishop e7 and bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. I would say this is kind of critical. So yeah, I remember Jesse showed this idea. I think it was something like this. d3, castles, queen d2, black goes b6, h4, bishop b7, castles, black pulls this one back, queen f4. I think this was it. And then black has this like incredible idea here to play c5. Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. I mean, c5 looks like a normal move, but the problem is after c takes b, or dc, sorry, we actually have a hard time recapturing here because there's like tactics on the d file and a lot of pressure. Instead, black plays this amazing move, queen b8, challenging white's queen and getting the queen off of the d file. If white wants to keep the extra pawn, they have to go for this endgame. But then black actually gets like a ton of very active play against white's king. It's like bishop d5 is next, and knight a4, rook fc8. It's like a Benko where white castles queenside and trades queens. It's like, so already I think just concretely, like, this is probably just good for black. I mean, back then the engines were saying black is fine, and now I'd imagine they're probably thinking that black is just better. I actually won a game from this position against like a really strong player, like International Master. So yeah, that was fun. That said, though, this line is pretty dangerous. It's not like all your opponents are just going to walk exactly down this path. So white has different setups too, can go with like queen e2 or putting the bishop on c4. So you do have to be kind of comfortable with dealing with this like h4 and knight g5 attack. So it's, yeah, not the safest thing in the world. That's why I always kind of liked bishop e7 here, just because I felt like I was getting the most French-like positions. Now, I guess the issue for black is that white has two very serious options here, like bishop takes e7 is definitely the main line, but h4 is a pretty serious pawn sacrifice and usually pretty fun way for white to play as well. So you do have to be aware of this one. I always play knight c6, and I had the plan to just go like knight b6, bishop d7. Nowadays, I'm not sure if I would really like this position, but it's been a while since I played the French, so you know, I think some French players might still be into this kind of position, and that's fine. Everyone has their their own taste, but personally, it's not for me anymore. Those days are long gone. Now, you know, you play e4, I'm gonna put a pawn on e5 or c5, you know, try to take more space. But okay, theoretically, I think black stands okay here. I think h6 is actually become the main move, but I don't exactly remember. And white can also take on e7, then after queen takes e7. These positions I think are the most French-like, and in my experience, black is usually all right, but you can get into some issues here. One thing to watch out for is knight b5. So before you play any kind of c5, you really got to make sure that you're covering this square. Otherwise, c5, knight b5, and black might just lose the game here. But okay, black plays a6, knight f3, c5, play knight c6. We often go b5, and I guess the main thing about this position is like the light square bishop is really a big problem, and so all of black's plans typically revolve around getting the bishop out. Sometimes it means pushing like b4, a5. Sometimes it means just putting the bishop on b7 and then trying to get this knight to c5 and e4, where the bishop on b7 kind of supports this knight. For instance, let's say just some random moves here. Black might play b5, bishop b7, and trying to plant a knight on e4, maybe playing rook d8 at some point to kind of support this. Or the other typical plan is to push b4, a5, and bishop a6. You just try to trade off the light squared bishops, and okay, if you're a French player, then this position should be pretty comfortable for you. Yeah, basically a Steinitz defense, but without the dark squared bishop, so it's kind of much quieter version, I would say. Okay, so Ian, I hope you got some good options here. Again, if you want craziness and like really messy positions, then go for bishop b4. But I guess if you wanted that, you would probably just be playing the winner we're in this position. So I'm guessing the fact that you play knight f6 means you want something a little bit more normal. And then I think either bishop e7 or de, and then bishop e7 would be, I feel like this would be kind of the most, just kind of like challenging way to play, where I think either black can equalize or in many cases just, you know, start playing for the win if white misplays things. Do I know of any good resources or books on learning the King's Indian? Yeah, Smirin's book, King's Indian Warfare. Because I think to learn the King's Indian, you need to just see like a lot of examples of good games in the King's Indian, much like other openings. And I think that book has a ton of like just great examples, a lot of classics and modern examples too about how to play the opening. Now, as far as like the theory goes, there's like Van Kampen series, yeah, on Chess24. Cotronius wrote a bunch of books that, I don't know, I think are very theoretical, but they don't really explain like the essence of the King's Indian. All right, let's move on to the next question, which comes from Laurent. And he's been in the dojo before, so shout out to Laurent, part of the Warrior group. Okay, he's asking, I like to sometimes answer 1d4 with d6, but I've found bishop f4, knight c3 systems annoying. The common suggestion against Jobava's system is to go d5, which is no longer possible. And I'd rather also avoid transposing into some kind of bishop e3 perk position where white goes bishop f4, queen d2, bishop h6. Yeah, I get you. Which I expect my opponent to be reasonably familiar with. What can I play? I don't mind an objectively inferior variation if it has some surprise value. Okay, Laurent, let's talk about your options, because I've faced this problem myself as a like King's Indian perk player. And yeah, so here's the issue that he's asking about. So when white goes d4, normal King's Indian players will play knight f6 here and go for this. And if white plays for knight c3, like the Verisov or like the Jobava attack that they call it with bishop f4, then black has a pretty solid option to go d5 here. Like you don't have to go d5, but if you want to like equalize, basically you play d5. Of course, black always has options of just playing like perk with d6, but this is really not everyone's cup of tea. But Laurent wants to play d4, d6. And now after knight c3, now it doesn't make any sense to play d5. I mean, we're just, losing a full tempo here. And so we need some other options. Oh yeah, the opening simulator book on the King's Indian. I saw that one. I think that one was a pretty interesting read as well. Maybe for like a beginner's guide to the King's Indian, I think actually that could be considered a pretty decent book. Yeah, so I dealt with this a little while back actually. My opponent played bishop f4 here, and I decided to go g6. In my prep for this game that I'm showing, like I saw my opponent was a London system player, so I knew like d4, bishop f4 is going to be on the board, so I decided to play d6, g6, and my idea here was to kind of play without knight f6, but go bishop g7, knight d7, and then kick this bishop with e5, which I think is actually kind of annoying against London system players. So this might be another way to play against the London, because then this knight can come out, let's say to... okay, of course knight c3 is a move here. Let's say white plays a London, kind of typical. Let's say bishop e2, we go e5, and now this knight can come out to like f5, for example, or via h6. I think this looked pretty fun for black. This looked like very, very King's Indian-esque. We also have an easier time getting e5 in because we're not blocking the bishop so early on. You can also get f5 exactly without needing to move the knight necessarily. So this is kind of a nice move order against the London. But then in this position, my opponent played knight c3, which I wasn't expecting, because I thought he was going to go e3, c3, and so on. And now, yeah, d5, I just lose like a full tempo. That doesn't seem good. Seems like we're going to just have to allow white to play e4. But this line is actually playable for black. So what I would suggest is bishop g7, and let's say white goes e4. We play knight c6. So it is a perk, but I would argue that it's a good perk, mainly because white's move order has been a little bit awkward. Usually this bishop is on e3, and the knight c6 is not so annoying. White can almost ignore it just because the d4 pawn is defended. But here the d4 pawn is under attack. Bishop e3 doesn't make sense. Okay, losing a tempo. And if white pushes d5, we have this nice trick to go e5 here. And I think black at least equalizes in this position. Let's say white takes the piece, we take here, dark square bishop opens up. Should be happy for any King's Indian player, I would say. And if white, let's say, pulls the bishop back, then black plays knight e7, we go f5, we go f5, knight f6, castles. We get our King's Indian, so we're, I think black should be happy here. If your idea was to play the King's Indian from the start, then of course this position should be within our wheelhouse. It actually might even be a nice version because, I mean, white put the knight on c3 and is like blocking the c-pawn. If white defended d4 with a knight, oh, could you play takes e5? I'm actually not sure. I was mainly thinking knight f3, bishop g4 would be the move, and just putting a lot of pressure, and then maybe just taking and going like e5. But this could easily be working too. I would imagine white has to go bishop e3 here, and we would get something like this, which feels, I don't know, actually, maybe black might be worse here. But it feels very playable. It's always hard to judge. We castle, we put the rook on e8, we target this guy. I think it's fine for black. I think because we traded off a pair of minor pieces that we should be okay. But personally, I kind of like bishop g4 here. I feel like this is much more annoying for white to deal with, actually. They probably have to just go like bishop e3 and defend this one. But then again, we get e5 in, and feels like this is always kind of okay for black. h3, just pull this guy back to d7, and we get our King's Indian like f5. Maybe throw an h6 here to cover the g5 square, and then go f5 and knight f6. Bishop g4, bishop b5 for white. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and my knight c6 experience tells me that black probably just has to play a6 here, and then either b5 or encourage white to go for this with the two bishops. Okay, what if white refrains from d5? Okay, yeah, knight f3, bishop g4, and if queen d2 and h4, let's see. So if they go e4 here, knight c6, now it's kind of too late because they do have to defend this guy. So then we get d5, e5. If they go queen d2, I'm not sure if I've looked at this move order, but I would actually look at either knight d7 or knight c6 here with the idea to play e5, because white doesn't have bishop h6 yet, and so it's kind of annoying for them. So I would explore this one and maybe knight c6 as well, again with this idea, if d5 to try to play e5. I think this is still okay. This one should be checked, like take, and maybe white can like grab a pawn or something here with queen takes f4. But I don't know. This is your dubious but playable position, Laurent. Something like this. Knight d7, knight f3. Yeah, exactly. We can go e5. as long as there's no rook on d1, then this one won't be working. Hey, Sombrero, good to see you. Yeah, I was gonna say it's possible maybe to play e5 here, but no, I wouldn't really want that end game after de. Okay, so, well, hold on, Laurent, because this was my option against bishop f4. Against knight c3, though, things are trickier. So here it's harder because white hasn't committed with bishop f4. So yeah, don't thank me yet. Let's go over what options we have. So one is, of course, to play into Perk, which I think you mentioned you basically don't want. Although if you're okay with some perk positions. For instance, like let's say you just don't want to go g6 and play into these lines. There are other moves here for like c6, and you can go like knight c6. I like the knight c6 stuff, and e5 as well. So you can play Philidor, which is, well, it's not to everyone's taste, so I don't know. It's just an option. You can also play it with, let's say, this move, or like knight d7, e4, e5, and then going for this setup, or for one of these e takes d4 lines. Philidor is okay. So yeah, Philidor is always an option here. Or you can play one of these weird perks, like for instance with c6. The benefit of this one is that like these bishop e3 systems are just not that effective, because from black's point of view, we're not playing g6 here. Usually the idea is to just go basically for a Philidor type of setup with bishop e7, queen c7, castles, and a5, this kind of thing. I would say in general this Philidor setup is like really solid. It's not like easy to play for black. There's lots of like tricks and ideas to know. Like there are many positions where you might have to play like d5 at the right moment and find like some kind of concrete central break, or maybe even like some, like if white goes bishop c4, we should be looking for knight takes e4 tricks, knight takes e4, d5. So you do have to be very tactically alert. It's not an opening you can just kind of play 100% by hand. But as far as like healthy setups go, I would say this has always felt reasonably healthy for me. And exactly, yeah, if you're playing like a d4 player who doesn't have a ton of Philidor experience, you know, I think for the most part you'll be fine if you feel comfortable in the structure. Now there are sharper lines for white, you know, with like f4 and stuff. I used to play this line with queen a5 a bunch, and these are, I would say, kind of shaky. Like I wouldn't want to play these long term, but something here might work for you with like again e5 and knight d7 ideas. Let's see, I think this line is also kind of, let's call it funny. F4, and the idea is to go e5. Let's say knight f3 and just take. And if white isn't really clear on what they're doing here, you might be able to get some nice counterplay with like c6, queen b6. I don't know too much against this one, but if white doesn't know this line, then they might really screw up the move order. But personally, I don't love it. I would play for like structures that you feel comfortable in, like Philidor and that kind of thing. There's an article in the yearbook in the checkbook. Oh, cool. I haven't seen that, but it would be interesting to see what they think about it. I think this is the check. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, question for you, Laurent. What is the point of playing 1d6 against d4 for you? Because there's different reasons to do it, and of course this one comes with a big drawback of like white could just play e4 against you, and then you're basically playing either a perk or a Philidor. So maybe we can help you out with the move order a bit. Oh, c4, e5. Gotcha. So you would go g6 here. Oh, well, what would you do in this position after knight c3? Tiger Modern. Oh, I see. Well, you could just play that. I mean, I don't think there's huge difference. Like if you just play g6 here, I don't think white really has anything better than e4, and then you basically get the modern. And if they go for this bishop f4 stuff again, then yeah, I would explore one of these early knight c6, knight d7 lines, like keeping this knight on g8 to cover this h6 square, and just not giving white their easy plan with h4, h5, and bishop h6. I see, knight c3 and bishop f4. Gotcha. Interesting. And then here I think knight c6 is a tricky way. Like you might even improve on the modern just because here we're kind of getting a lot of like e5 ideas really fast. But cool. Okay, hope this helps. And we'll be saving the VOD of this and putting it up on Patreon. Yeah, enjoy. All right, let's get to our next question here. All right, next one is from Vishnu. So Vishnu asked a bunch of questions. All right, number one, what is a good resource to learn the modern exchange variation in the Grunfeld from White's point of view? What do I like to play against G3 systems in the kid? Actually, we're going to have another G3 King's Indian question later on. When you play 1d4 knight f6 and white goes either bishop f4 or knight c3, what do you think black should do? Okay, I guess we already covered this one a little bit, but yeah, we can talk a little bit more about d5. And number 4, when I play specific opponents, I am able to prepare well enough for them, giving Jesse the impression that I'm well prepared in the opening. However, against general opponents, I often lose out of the opening, especially as I like to play sharp openings. Would you say I'm at a level where ChessBase could be helpful for opening prep and also in general? Yeah, that's a good question. David, maybe you could give us your thoughts on this last one. Vishnu's like about, I think, 1900 rating or so. Actually not 100% sure. Maybe 2000. I definitely feel like he's capable of playing like over 2000 level just from seeing his games. You know, he's definitely like a really decent player. So I would say Vishnu is actually right at the level where ChessBase becomes like maybe more and more useful, because especially as you're playing sharper openings, you do need to kind of like know your stuff. Yeah, Paspawn, VOD is video on demand. So if you miss like a part of this, you know, video, you can check out the whole thing later. I think we'll put it up on YouTube at some point. Okay, so where should I start with these questions? maybe number 1. Hey, Plu Crew, good to see you. Let's go here. All right, what is a good resource to learn the modern exchange variation in the Grunfeld from White's point of view? It's hard. Actually, I haven't been aware of a lot of coverage from White's point of view. I mean, Avrik has wrote like a two volume set on the Grunfeld, but from Black's point of view. And yeah, I mean, the question is how to get an advantage for White in this position. I think this is the modern exchange variation where White has like a million options here, like knight f3, bishop e3, bishop c4, rook b1 stuff, and so on. h4 lines, queen a4 check. Yeah, I don't know of a lot of books. I know the Kaufman repertoire was recommending f3 a little while back. I don't know if he switched that or not. But yeah, tough one for White. This is one where, well, honestly, no one knows what to do against the Grunfeld. There's no advantage. so it's been solid. It's been solid for years. There's no advantage in the Grunfeld. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. Let's set our expectations. There's no objective advantage, but you can get really complicated positions, and if you enjoy playing with a space advantage in a big center, there's tons of room to outplay the opponent, of course, at all levels. So this is going to be more about just trying to find a position that you feel like is playable, where you understand where your pieces go, and then from there it's on you to outplay the opponent. If you're playing someone who just knows, like, who's memorized both of Avrik's books in the Grunfeld and is just like fully booked up, yeah, it's going to be really hard to get an objective advantage, but still, you can get something playable, and nobody's perfect. People make mistakes all the time. You know, we'll see Svidler and NVL lose games, and then Grunfeld all the time, even though they're like super experts, right? So, it's not something to necessarily avoid. There's a chapter in the Vigorito book on the Grunfeld. Oh, that's interesting. Which one? Vigorito has a ton of books. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't know any good resources from White's point of view. Maybe there's a Chessable repertoire or something. I feel like there's some D4 repertoires, so they probably cover the Grunfeld from White's side. The lines that I would personally recommend are in this position to go for knight f3, bishop e3 setups. I think these are pretty healthy for White nowadays. We saw Magnus playing these last year. So if you don't find anything else, just look up Carlsen's games against the Grunfeld last couple years, and you'll have a ton of material to study, to be honest. But he played some setups with bishop e3, queen d2, rook c1. I thought they were really interesting. Bishop e2, castling, and just trying to like hold on to the center. And it's really up to Black to kind of create counterplay. So I think this is very playable. Oh, Jonathan Rowson did a good book on the Grunfeld. Oh, interesting. Developments in the Grunfeld. That makes sense. I mean, I think Vigorito is a really good author. I remember looking at a lot of his stuff when I was researching my Sicilian book. Isn't the anti-Grunfeld the way to go if you want an advantage that way? Well, that's a good point, Nazgulis. I guess we could discuss this. The problem is that not every d4 player is going to feel comfortable playing like... Did you mean the f3 stuff, or did you mean like this kind of anti-Grunfeld stuff? Because this stuff definitely is like, can be pretty annoying for Black. Oh, f3, okay. Well, since we're here, this can be really annoying for Grunfeld players because well, number one, if they don't play d5 in this exact position, if they play like bishop g7, White can go e4 and kind of like trick Black into a King's Indian. So this is a problem. So they got to go d5 in this position before White is committed to d4, which is actually just gives White more options. There's like queen b3 here, which is annoying. There's queen a4 check, which is annoying. Like queen a4, and somehow Black doesn't really have a super comfortable way to block. Bishop d7, queen d4. It's like Black has to go knight f6, e4. These positions are weird. They're not super fun for Black. Then there's queen b3. I think h4 is also like pretty popular. There's e4 line. So there's a lot of options here. Problem for White is though, like if you're a d4 player and you play knight f3, if your opponent doesn't play the Grunfeld, plays like c5 or something, you know, you're kind of like out of book and you're not getting your d4 position that you're normally comfortable with. Now there's lots of different options for White, but yeah, it's about building a repertoire that works. F3 is a really sharp system. Maybe Vishnu, it's the one for you. I know you like the F3 Nimzo. I mean, I don't know how much you like the F3 Nimzo. I know you play the F3 Nimzo. So this is actually pretty similar. If you like the F3 lines against the Samish, or F3 lines against the King's Indian, the Samish, then this is a really good option because you can transpose into the King's Indian this way. Or you force Black to play d5 at a time when you haven't played knight c3 yet, which is kind of a nice nuance. Takes e4, and Black can't capture this knight on c3, has to go back. And that means that White doesn't have to trade these pieces out of the opening and gets a little bit, let's say, livelier position. Bishop e3 is the plan, queen d2, castles, h4, h5. There's a lot of theory here. I think Kaufman did a repertoire on this line, but it's a little bit, you know, a couple years old. F3 gives Black some good play Benko style. Well, the drawback to F3 is that Black does have a lot of options here. I used to play this as white quite a bit because against the King's Indian I would play the f3 lines, and against the Grunfeld these lines are pretty fun, so it seemed like a good option. I like it both against Grunfeld and King's Indian. Black has extra options like can play this and even b5. But I don't know, not everyone is a Benko player. See, the thing is like at higher levels, you don't have too many players that play like King's Indian, Grunfeld, Benko. They usually have like one main opening. And so if it's a King's Indian player, then you know they're going to play bishop g7. They're not going to play d5. And if it's a Grunfeld player, they're probably going to play d5. They're not going to play the King's Indian, and they're probably not going to play the Benko. Right? Now they might, work on it. Like some strong players, they decide, you know what, if white goes f3, yeah, I'm going to go into a Benko gambit here. But usually you kind of know like what to expect from them. And so if they're a Benko gambit player, then, well, okay, here they would probably be playing c5 and going for the Benko. So it's not the easiest system for black to prepare for. Although there are a bunch of options. I mean, I didn't even label the sidelines. There's also knight c6, which is like a very playable and tricky move here. Good choice for King's Indian players who want something tricky against this. There's e6, which is a nonsense line that somehow works because I think the engine says it does, and so people started playing it. There's even this move knight h5 here, which was played against me by Grandmaster Michalewski a couple of years ago. Which I should say, knight h5 doesn't really make sense, but it does make sense when you consider that e5 is another move that black has in this position. It's a pretty old move. They don't really play this one anymore. It's like a it's like a weird version of a Budapest gambit where black goes knight h5, threatens queen h4 check. White is forced to play like knight h3 here or something, and black doesn't really get enough. Sometimes they get the pawn back, but white usually gets an edge here. But yeah, with this line came this line, where if white goes e4, black's idea is to play e5 and kind of get the stake in the center and also prepare queen h4 check. Yeah, objectively I think it's not good. I think white plays like bishop e3 here and they're okay, or like knight h3 here I think is probably fine, or maybe black has nothing better than to transpose into this other line. Wouter, the point of f3 for white is to play e4, but without allowing black to exchange knights with d5. So if white goes knight c3 here, black goes d5. Here, black gets to trade off these knights, and in the long run, in the Grunfeld, black always gets this counterplay against these weak pawns. By starting with f3, if black plays d5, white can take this one and push e4. Black isn't able to make this exchange, and white's knight just comes out, and white gets kind of like more active development. Okay, so hopefully that helps Vishnu. I mean, he was mainly asking for resources, which, yeah, I don't know, maybe Chessable, but I would mostly just look at some of the games of like Carlsen, for example. Number 2, what do I like to play against g3 systems in the King's Indian? Okay, let's flip it around. And yeah, I mean, I've been a King's Indian guy for several years now. I played a lot of stuff in this position. My main line for maybe the last year or two has been to play knight c6, which I think is pretty fun. If white goes d5, black can either go back, actually knight b8 is not bad, or play knight a5 and c5 and go for these lines that I think are pretty comfortable for black overall, with like queenside play, a6, rook b8, b5, and everything just kind of straightforward. White usually goes for knight c3, and then the point is to play e5. There are many different lines in the King's Indian Fianchetto. This is just the one I found myself playing and really enjoying. I would say white has two main options here. Quickly go through what could happen. If white pushes d5, then black's idea is to go back, knight b8, e4, a5, knight e1, knight a6. let's say knight d3, knight f d7, and then this knight is coming to c5. Black wants to play f5 and b6. I think it's a very healthy type of King's Indian. If you like the King's Indian, this should be playable for you. White's other option is to go d takes e5, and then I think black should just recapture, bishop g5, bishop e6. This is the one where there's like some theory that you would have to know, but generally I feel like black has good chances here. Typical plan is to unpin with like queen c8, maybe play rook e8, bring this knight over to d7, maybe go h6 somewhere, maybe f6, and eventually actually just try to expand like f5, e4. If black can get the pawns up, then we really just take a bunch of space, and white's bishop on g2 can feel shut down. So it's really up to white here to try to like create some attacking chances with like queen a4. Or I think black should go queen c8 and then follow up again like rook e8, knight d7, and so on, and just eventually just kind of kicking white all the way back. Pawn Wonder says, I've had some great games in this line. Oh, cool. From whose point of view? Because white can have some success in this line if they're well prepared, but I don't know. Personally, I like it for black. All right, next one. When I play d4, knight f6, and white goes either bishop f4 or knight c3, what do I think black should do? I've heard people recommend d5 against knight c3. Why is that? Why ditch King's Indian plans? Yeah, so this actually goes back a little bit to Laurent's question, but here d4, knight f6, knight c3, like I mentioned, black usually goes for d5. The problem is that white doesn't want a King's Indian. White is the one who has officially avoided the King's Indian with their move knight c3. If they wanted a King's Indian, they should play c4 here. This is what that is. Knight c3 means white wants to transpose into perk defense, and that's not cool. You know, that's like not what we agreed to. White played d4, okay? So we're in d4 openings. Black goes knight f6. And if white is going to change gears and play knight c3, then yeah, black has to play d5. You know, I'm sorry. But it is what it is, guys. It is what it is, you know? Like, so you play d5, and now white's knight on c3 just looks stupid because like the pawn is not on c4, it's on c2. One day maybe black plays c6 and just like restricts the knight, and that's it. Black is better. Okay, just kidding. But yeah, I think these positions, you know, it's a different kind of position. We're not getting a King's Indian. You could play perk style, you know, d6, g6. I would be fine with this position, for example, but yeah, obviously this isn't everyone's cup of tea. The Barry attack is obnoxious. Yeah, Barry attack is a little bit annoying. That's this one. And is it knight f3 here? I actually forget the move order for the Barry. Or is it queen d2? Something like this. Yeah. Theoretically, I think black stands fine here. Like if bishop h6, for example, black should just castle. Let's say h4, like white goes for something super dangerous. Black can play c5, and black is in time here. Like we are just taking on d4 and going knight c6 and just immediately creating counterplay. But this is why people find this stuff dangerous, though, is because if you don't know what you're doing here with black, and if you just like hesitate and play c6, then here you might already like be in trouble. You might just not be getting out of dodge here, and you might be having issues. So you really have to play really actively when your opponent is attacking with h4. Like you really have to just try to open up the center and punish them. And here it doesn't really, white's not really in time. Like h5 we would take, and bishop is hanging. If takes, I'm pretty sure black can get away with just taking this one. Queen h6. And let's see, have I blundered something? I feel like this is supposed to be good for black. Let me see. Yeah, we're just totally winning here. Rook b1, queen a5 check. And knight g4, yeah, that's a funny way to just win the game. This mate, this one, and if queen moves, we're taking here. Yeah. So basically white's just not really in time to play h5 because black's counterplay just gets there first. And if they take, we're pushing d4. So this stuff I think really works for black, but you do have to know a little bit of theory here. But objectively, it's very good. So that's kind of why black goes for it. The old line, the Verisov bishop g5, used to be considered pretty dangerous, but I guess nowadays people aren't that impressed. We don't see white doing this too much. One move I think is surprisingly playable, but I really like is just h6. Just inviting white to give up the bishop, because this structure I actually think is totally healthy for black. You just play bishop d6, castles, f5, knight d7, knight f6, and I think black is just developing everything really comfortably. So yeah, my recommendation is d5, and if white plays bishop f4, g6, knight c3, I would go for d5 here. Although there's different options. Again, you can play a perk, but I like d5. I like these lines. By the way, Vishnu, I've definitely covered this stuff in earlier videos on the Patreon. So if you watch this later, if you go back and check it out, check out like previous opening labs. People have definitely asked about this knight c3, bishop f4 stuff. So you might be able to get an even deeper look. Okay, number 4. When I play specific opponents, I'm able to prepare well enough for them, giving Jesse the impression that I'm well prepped in the opening. However, against general opponents, I often lose out of the opening, especially as I like to play sharp openings. Right, this is the ChessBase question. Yeah, people are always asking about ChessBase. I did a video a little while back. Some of you may remember about ChessBase and whether it was worth it. I mean, I think this is the level where it does get more and more useful. Because with ChessBase, like, you know, you have an opening, you have any kind of position, you can just look it up, see what strong players are playing, see what the classics were, like what did Capablanca do in this position 100 years ago. And it's just so much knowledge packed in to like a database. ChessBase, the program itself is not just the database, it's like the ability to create your own databases and like basically like lead chess studies, you know, like getting compiling different games and analyzing and annotating games and saving all your notes and stuff. For a coach, it's really invaluable because I just have like tons of databases with like lesson material, you know, instructive games, end games, middle games, key attacking plans, you know, all kinds of stuff. So is it really necessary to get to, I don't know, 2200 for example? Like absolutely not, especially with Chessable and like Lichess. Again, you know, you can save all of your openings in Lichess now or in Chessable and like train your repertoire. Definitely doesn't feel like it's necessary. Now, is it like, I don't know, it's such a tough question. I've been using ChessBase for years. My coach taught me how to use ChessBase. He was always using it. You know, it's just been the program. Like, you know, the history of ChessBase is pretty incredible. It started out in like late 80s, maybe early 90s when Kasparov was the world champion, and he was one of the first players to use it. Vishy Anand was one of the first players to use ChessBase. And then Gary just like started out preparing everyone and just killing people. It wasn't the database. It was just the fact that you can save your analysis. You can analyze a position for days and days and days and then save the analysis and then come back to it later and be like, oh yeah, what was I looking at here? Oh yeah, there's this and this. And you just save information. You know, they didn't have a great way to store information back then. And people just had to like write out their chess moves on like index cards. Like here's what you're playing today, boss. And it's just like a little note, like some lines. You know, people that have to like, you know, handwrite stuff. It was crazy. I feel like a boomer. Like, you guys are so lucky nowadays with your Chessable and your Lichess. Back in my day, no, I grew up with ChessBase, so I was one of the lucky ones. If you're trying to get to like titled, like IM or GM, I think ChessBase is probably like unavoidable at some point, because you're gonna want to use it offline. You know, you're not always going to be logged into Wi-Fi when you're traveling for a tournament, and it's nice to have a program there with all of your files, your repertoire. Okay, the ability to run an analysis engine and like save your analysis, pretty important too, like running Stockfish, running Komodo or Leela. It's not that easy for the average player to like run Stockfish on a position and have it run to like a meaningful depth. Like the chess.com engine doesn't go that deep. The Lichess engine doesn't go that deep. So it's tough. So I think once you're in that range, like 2,000 plus, and you're actively like, you're at a spot where you're preparing for your opponents, like you know who you're playing tomorrow morning, and you're looking up their games, and you're really putting a lot of work into the opening. Then ChessBase becomes really useful. If you feel like you're just trying to work on your own openings, it's not really about preparing for like players, maybe it's not that important. And more important would be to like study games in your openings, like studying a lot of King's Indian games, or whatever, you know, whatever your repertoire is, just studying middle games that strong players enter from that position. That's going to be that's going to make you the better chess player. And you might have a game or two where someone like catches you in an opening trap, but you just learn from it, and you know, you move on. Never lose the same way twice in an opening, and you'll be fine. What would I consider good depth for engines? I think in like sharp positions, somewhere in the range of 30 is pretty decent. You know, it's all relative. Like if you're writing a book or you're a correspondence player, it's just like there's no limit, just as high as you can possibly go. 40, 50, 60, table base, doesn't matter. But if you just want like to understand a position, then like depth 25 to 30 is pretty good. Anything below depth 40 is trash. Are chess informants still around? I think they have shapeshifted into the yearbook. I don't know 100%, but I think if you're looking for like opening analysis from like strong players and analysts, the New in Chess yearbook, or the New in Chess opening survey, I think is a pretty good one. They do like an issue every 2 months or something with some good articles. Oh, chess informants are now in a CD. Interesting. Yeah, so yeah, as far as the investment goes, because ChessBase is like $100, and if you buy a mega database, that might be like another $100. I think it's totally reasonable. You know, like if you're going to be playing chess for years and years, then you'll be using the program for years and years. I've definitely been using ChessBase for probably like 12 years at this point, maybe more. Yeah, New in Chess, game per frame. They do like a opening survey every 2 months or so. Or is it called the yearbook? I forget what it's called. I think it's the yearbook. And it's just like opening articles. Erwin Lamy, actually, GM Erwin Lamy does some really interesting writing. If I could just give him a shout out. I think he covers like a lot of correspondence games, and he'll do the dirty work of actually like analyzing correspondence games with like a deep engine and just like trying to figure out like what the heck is going on. Yeah, so I don't think it's a mistake or a mystery that basically every top player has ChessBase and uses it. You know, like when you think about the people at the top, like Carlsen and Caruana and all of their top teams, everyone is just using ChessBase. It's just like they all have their laptops with ChessBase. They have a file, they send someone else their PGN file, they work on it, they send it back to them. They might have like cloud databases, but it's all in ChessBase. Like you wouldn't be part of that team and not be using ChessBase. So it's just like it's such a given at the top level that it's hard to ignore that. But everyone is waiting for a ChessBase for Mac. I mean, oh my God, if someone could just make a working version of ChessBase for Mac where you can load your analysis, you can load Stockfish and have your Mac computer or your Mac laptop, whatever, actually run and use its full power, you would just make like $1 trillion. There's so many chess players that like can't use ChessBase because they have Macs. I don't need it. I've never used the Mac in my life. I don't care. I don't care at all. I'm just, you know, but there's a lot of Mac users out there, you know, and I feel for them. Yeah, patient chess. I would say the bigger advantage of ChessBase is not that you can look up information, because yeah, like there are the databases that are, you can find a lot of databases online with like opening trees and stuff. It's more for me the fact that you're able to like save your analysis. That's what seems like the main feature. You can just save your analysis and store it and annotate your games and so on. All right, Vishnu. Well, I hope that was useful. All right, I think we got a couple more questions here. Actually, we got one from Thad, who just asked this an hour ago, actually, which is really cool. So made it just in time. What is your philosophy about how to learn a new opening? I've been playing the French for almost the whole 20 years I've been an active player. Increasingly, the French feels stale and boring to me, so I'm attempting to learn the accelerated dragon. Nice. However, it seems overwhelming at times to change openings. Yeah, I hear you. My opening repertoire has been mostly unchanged since the beginning because it always has felt like a huge amount of work to change. However, I don't like all of the choices I made long ago. Yeah, Thad, what can I say? You're in a chess crisis. If I could give you an analogy. Let's say you've been working as a mechanic for the last 20 years. And the reason you've been doing that is because that's what your father did. And so he taught you how to be a mechanic. And so you worked as a mechanic. And now you're 35 or 45. And you realize you don't like being a mechanic. You would much rather be a lawyer. Or, I don't know. Anything. Anything else. Doesn't matter. I think you get the point I'm trying to make. The change is always hard, but probably you'll be happier once you're on the other side. So you've been a mechanic for 20 years. You've saved up some cash. You can afford to go to law school, become a lawyer. It's going to be really hard. But at the end of it, it's like, Thad, you know you want to be a lawyer. So just learn the dragon, start playing rook takes c3, and change your, you know, chess is supposed to be enjoyable. And even if you're someone who's like, I only care about results, I don't care about enjoying the game, I just want to win games, learning a new opening will make you a stronger player. And so it's still worth it. So I would say you should just go for it. Find an opening that you want to see yourself playing. Like if you could snap your fingers and you just have like 6 months of knowledge on any one opening and you're now playing like the dragon or the Najdorf or whatever it is, I think you'll be happier once you do it. Now, how to actually go about it, I think I can help you out with that as well. But the main point I really want to stress is like, if you're not happy with like the positions you're getting out of the opening, you're not going to be doing as well as if you enjoy it. When I switched to the King's Indian, like I was just pumped. I couldn't wait to play like King's Indian against people. I was happy to be black. I was hoping to face d4 players. I just want to checkmate them. I just want to play e5 and f5 and f4 and just checkmate everybody. I was pretty excited about like when I switched to the Taimanov a while back. Nowadays I'm playing knight c6. I like knight c6. You know, people shame me a lot for playing knight c6, but I like it. I'm just gonna keep doing it. If the dragon is a lawyer, which opening is the mechanic? Well, in this example, it was the French. It was the French, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of speaking from experience. I used to play the French for quite some time. And at a certain point, I think I was just stuck at like 2200. So I played the French all the way until I hit 2200. Then I got stuck there. I don't know if it was because of the French necessarily, but I decided like it was time for a change. Let's learn some new positions, expand our horizons. I decided to play e4, e5, and I learned how to play e4, e5. I used Jan Gustafsson's old DVD series, I think for ChessBase, where he covered like a lot of e4, e5 lines, and that was really, really useful. I started playing e4, e5. I struggled a little bit at first, but then eventually it totally, worked out. I became a better player. And then eventually I switched to the Taimanov, and now I just feel like a much more well-rounded player. In fact, I think switching my openings to the King's Indian and the Taimanov was like one of the most important things I did to reach IM level, because then I was stuck at like 2360 for a little while, and like a couple of years probably. And then I felt like, okay, I got to learn some new openings to infuse some life into my game. Okay, so how do you actually learn a new opening? This is always something, I think I've done some videos on this and can do more in the future as well. I think the first thing is, once you've chosen your opening, you got to find a player who you kind of look up to and you can follow. Basically a hero for your opening. For the Accelerated Dragon, you have a couple of good options. There's Eduardo Iturrizaga, really strong GM from Venezuela. He's like a big Accelerated Dragon guy. He's playing it like every game. Rauf Mamedov is a big Accelerated Dragon expert. Who else? Help me out, guys. Who else plays the Accelerated Dragon? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever opening you choose, there are players who play that opening constantly, and you can often like look it up. Eugene Perelstein, yeah. He's a big Accelerated Dragon guy, absolutely. I'm sure he has a lot of good videos on YouTube. Olafsson, I didn't know that, but fair enough. So find players that are really strong, that play the opening you're trying to learn, and just try to play through some of their games. Just try to understand, what they're doing, what kinds of ideas are they playing for. Liquang Liam, that's possible. Yeah, I think he might have done the Accelerated Dragon. Hikaru, I don't know. Maybe Hikaru plays it in faster time controls. I feel like in classical time controls, Hikaru is usually either a Najdorf player or a e4, e5 player. Or he plays a lot of regular dragon. Yeah. Hey, Hortbeck, thanks for subscribing. Much appreciated. Online School Rocks, I'm talking about the dragon just because that was listed in the question. Thad mentioned he's attempting to learn the Accelerated Dragon, so I was just naming some players that play that opening. There are certainly advantages to the dragon versus the Accelerated Dragon. I don't think we really have to get into them here. It's basically, do you want to get checkmated or do you want to face the Marazzi bind? That's kind of the question that we're trying to answer here. Yeah, Hikaru played like the regular dragon, and then within that there's some variations. There's one called like the Chinese dragon, other stuff. Raja Pandwani, yeah, he did write a book on the Accelerated Dragon that seemed pretty solid. So at some point you might want to get some kind of course or repertoire to follow. There's lots of good opening books, and I'm sure there's Chessable courses out there as well. Personally, I feel like Chessable nowadays is kind of the way to go with repertoires, because they just give you everything and then you just get to practice it. and that's like the most important part. You can read an opening book, but you still have to like practice the lines. You still have to kind of do the Chessable spaced repetition part. So it makes a lot of sense to just start with Chessable and just learn your lines there. I don't really understand the Bong Cloud strategy. I mean, what's the point in switching king and queen? Well, what's the point of anything? I guess that's the answer there. Dragon, high risk, high reward versus Accelerated Dragon, lower risk, lower reward. Yeah, that's true. I would say that's pretty fair. Accelerated Dragon is kind of more solid, but you're not going to win out of the opening as often. How long does it take to learn an opening in Chessable usually? It really depends on the course. I mean, some of them can be super deep if they're for like really advanced players. But I feel like, like a month, you could do a lot of damage. The important thing though is not just to focus on the lines, but to also play a lot of openings as well. Or play a lot of games as well. So if the idea is to learn the Accelerated Dragon, Thad, then all of your online Blitz games from now on, if they go E4, I'm going to give you your repertoire. You go C5. If they go Knight F3, you go Knight C6. Unless you want to go G6, that's also fine. And then you're just gonna play this. Now there might be other options here. Of course, that's always the kind of the drawback of the Sicilian that people bring up, is that there's lots of sidelines. Personally, I think that's one of the best parts of the Sicilian, is that black is like fine in all of the sidelines and fine in like multiple ways. You have your pick, you have your choice, and so you can get a lot of comfortable variations. You have to do a little bit of studying, but overall white doesn't really get anything, so it's kind of worth it. Mitch was asking earlier, I missed the question, if the Grunfeld is more solid than the Semi-Slav, or which one is better. I think they're both theoretically really sound. They're one of the most like theoretically viable openings out there, and so it just depends on which one you enjoy. If you want to be more solid, Semi-Slav; more dynamic, Grunfeld. No, the Botvinnik Semi-Slav, yeah, less solid, that's for sure. But theoretically, very sound. Okay, Thad, hopefully that helps. I hear you. I agree that it's hard to change your openings, but if you really want to take your chess to the next level, there's nothing better, in my opinion, than to infuse your chess with new positions, new ideas, and this is how I think you strengthen your overall understanding of the game. Jesse would tell you to analyze your games. I think that's also important, but do that along with switching your opening. So start playing the opening, just play it, in Blitz and stuff, get crushed, it doesn't matter, get some experience. Start looking at games by strong players who play that opening, start following them and see what they're doing. And then once you've done that, then think about maybe looking at like a course on Chessable or something, or like a repertoire or a book. Yeah, I'm sure Shanklin's repertoire is really, really solid, and lengthy. He's been a Semi-Slav guy for many years, so that's good. You guys saw that like Anish Giri is like doing a French repertoire. That was for Chessable. I guess it's coming out eventually. I don't know about that. I just don't know. Anish Giri is not a French player. You look him up. He's played the French like 10 times in his life. Most of that was like when he was a kid. He's not a French guy. I don't know, it's weird. Would I consider it to be dubious for a 21-2200 player to play the Greco Gambit as white in the Italian as part of their repertoire? A little bit, actually. Yeah. Are you talking about the the C3 D4 stuff? Is that it? This thing? She was always asking for a friend. That's funny. Yeah, Nepo actually started playing the French. But yeah, if you haven't played the French, I don't know. I just think there's other French players out there. Rajabov played the French for many years. So if you want someone to do a French repertoire, I think Rajabov would be a cool. If you wanted like a super player. Yeah, Race to GM. I mean, this line is really playable at lower levels. It's like super dangerous if black doesn't know it. But the problem is that this line is like, it's pretty well known, especially at higher levels, that I don't think you're gonna find a lot of 2,000 plus players with black who play this that don't know, you know, like, what was it, bishop f6, rook e1, knight e7, take, d6, this line, right? Like, I think most players above 2,000 who play e4, e5 and go into that position are gonna know like this bit of theory. It's just been out there for so long, and you know, maybe you'll be able to trick someone, but ultimately I don't think it's a good long-term option for white. Just because if black knows the theory, then they're fine, and then like that's it. You know, it's like a one game try. Instead, check this out. Instead of the Joko piano, try the Joko d3 stuff. Slower, you put your knight on d2, castle, h3, rook e1, knight f1, knight g3, and you try to outplay your opponent in the middle game, you know? What do you think about that? Hey, Vic the Man, what's my take on Jobava London? Actually, I talked about it quite a bit earlier, so I would encourage you to just check out the VOD later to see, like, because I went through a lot of lines. But in general, I think it's really playable. I think black is fine theoretically, but from white's point of view, if you're looking for something kind of like fun and fresh, then it's definitely a playable line, but ultimately it's dangerous for black if they don't know what they're doing, but if you do, then you're fine. You're basically fine. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Thad, I hope that helps. Good luck. I wanna hear an update in a couple months. I want to see some accelerated dragon games. It's honestly not the hardest opening to learn. I would say something like the Najdorf is a lot more challenging to pick up in terms of the theory. I would say the accelerated dragon is one of the simpler ways to do that. Hey, Sarab. Yeah, actually, help me with this, guys. I don't know anything about the 1080p versus 360p. I don't know how to offer that option. How do I do that? I know I'm streaming in 1080p, but I don't know how to offer 360p. If that makes sense. If you let me know how to update my Twitch settings, I'll happily do that. Partners always have the option to change res. Oh, we're not partners though. We're just affiliate. But depending on server loads, affiliate might only have source available. I see. Gotcha. Brown Rice Bro asks, as someone who used to play as a kid, just got back into it, where is a good place to learn openings? I guess Chessable. We've been talking about Chessable a lot. There's lots of good places. I mean, you know, YouTube has a ton of free videos on all kinds of openings that are really helpful. Chess.com has really good videos. Chess24. Chessable has some really good courses as well. So tons and tons of options, actually. Dude, you have lucked out. It is not like when you played as a kid. Wikipedia? Maybe. Yeah, actually, I don't know. Is Alekine's defense legit? Bro, yeah. Alekine defense is legit. Hashtag still playable. Yes. You go here. You go here. And then you play d6, unless they go c4, and then you go back to b6, and then you play d6, knight c6, g6, bishop g7, castles. And it's all playable. Try to get this bishop out somewhere. If you get the light square bishop out, you're usually okay. Especially for, I don't know your level, I apologize, but for, you know, for lower levels, the lower you go, the more everything is just totally playable. It's just a matter of whether you enjoy the position or not. Would I recommend Sveshnikov for under 2,000, or is it too hard to play? You know, if you asked me this like a little while ago, I would say I'm not such a fan of the Sveshnikov. Because personally, I feel like, I mean, for lower rated players, theoretically it stands, oh my god, extremely well. Just for improving players, I never loved giving them the structure as black and say, yeah, just play with this like weak d5 or weak d6 pawn, you'll be fine. But you know, actually our next person asking a question, Jason, he didn't comment on here, but he sent me a question on Discord. I know he plays the Sveshnikov, and he's had some games on the Sunday show, and he's like a walking advertisement for it, because he's just like super solid with black. He gets this dark squared bishop, he castles, and goes a6 b5, gets counterplay. So I think it is playable. I think it is. If you have like a good repertoire, I think like Selecki has really good repertoire on it based on like Magnus's repertoire for the World Championship, then totally playable. But it's not my favorite opening, to be clear. I don't like giving up the weaknesses. Isn't it extremely drawish? I don't know. I mean, drawish is such a loaded word, you know? Like, like what does drawish really mean, right? Like, usually what drawish means is that white has no ways of fighting for an advantage, and so the position just remains like really equal at high levels. But at lower levels, I think you can have the most drawish position, you can still outplay your opponent. So it's not such a relevant question, to be honest. Like, there are lines that will be equal, and I guess the drawish reputation comes from the World Championship match between Anand and Gelfand several years ago, where Gelfand was playing the Sveshnikov against Anand, and Anand just like, you know, he has one of the best prepared teams and he just couldn't get an advantage, and it was like draw after draw, just couldn't beat it. So that's when it was like, oh, Sveshnikov is really solid, and then Caruana couldn't beat it. You know, Magnus had like really, but it doesn't mean it's drawish, especially the way Magnus has been playing it, super dynamic. Like, Magnus probably has won more games with it than with like other black openings. So, you know, compared to e4, e5, like Sveshnikov is really very, very playable. Pluker, I remember that. Oh, yeah. Sad. Gelfand, you guys may have no idea how close Gelfand was to being a world champion. My God. Would have been really interesting. At the time, I was like, who's this guy? Like, you know, Anand, all the way. But now I have a ton of respect for Gelfand, so that would have actually been really cool. Leiko even closer. Was Leiko closer? I don't know. I think Gelfand was closer. Gelfand was like one accurate move away from winning. He had like the lead in the tiebreak rapid, and he was like, or maybe like the draw, and he's like winning a rook endgame and like one accurate rook move and he wins. Probably an idea he's like seen before many times too. So he was like actually, people might not know like how close we were to having Chigorin as our first world champion instead of Steinitz. Think about the butterfly effect on that one. If Chigorin didn't blunder rook h2 in his final game against Steinitz and won his match and became the first world champion, would have been a whole different history. We would have world champion Anish Giri now or something. Everything would have been way different. Way different. Yeah, Steinitz beat Zukertort. That's true. Chigorin would have been the second world champion. That's true. I should clarify that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah. Steinitz Zukertort, that was the first one. I think you're right, Marcellus. And then Chigorin was the first challenger. Let's not push it. Yeah. We would need a lot of changes in history before enough effects happen that Anish Giri gets world championship. That's really funny. Okay, guys, we got one more question for the opening lab. Like I mentioned, this one wasn't on Patreon. This one was actually just sent through Discord. Oh, next time, Jason, please do comment on this post so that we can put it on the stream. But Jason was actually asking about the Selecki, the ChessExplained D4 repertoire, specifically against the King's Indian. So yeah, we had a question earlier about the fianchetto variation. And Jason's question was specifically about this position, or more specifically about ChessExplained's repertoire. And he asked me to he sent me some lines and asked me to look through it and let him know what I thought of it. So yeah, overall, I think the B3 system is pretty playable for white. It's in general, I like the fianchetto variation actually against the King's Indian for low rated players because it gives white like a pretty safe position and like very solid and playable. Avrook is of course a big fianchetto guy. He wrote a couple of good books on this, but he never recommended the B3 stuff. He was always a C4, knight C3 advocate. ChessExplained suggests B3, which is a pretty modern way actually of playing this. And the idea is just to put the bishop on B2 and discourage black from playing E5 or set up bishop A3 in some case. Like if black goes E5 here, I think the idea is to take and play like bishop A3. And then this is a little bit annoying for black where white just tries to jump and get some initiative. So yeah, this is this I think is pleasant for white. As black here, what I've been doing is knight D7, bishop B2, and rook E8. And I think the repertoire suggests rook E1 here, which is pretty interesting if because white wants to go for E4. I think the line that follows, let me check my notes here, is to play E5. Let's see, knight D7, bishop B2. Yeah, D takes E5, D takes E5. It's important to note white can't really take this one here because of knight G4. Very annoying move for white where the bishop on B2 is hanging, and yeah, it's just a problem. Watch how you're close to transposing to a Philidor. Well, I do like playing the Philidor setup in this type of opening. Like if white, not sure what happens if white goes E4 here, but a lot of times I want to just set up C6, Queen C7, A5, and I think black is reasonable, especially if white does something else like knight D2 here, for example. Let's say rook E8, knight D2, probably C6, E4, E5, and then Queen C7, A5, and this would be kind of the plan for black. I feel like very playable for black, solid for both sides. I don't think white has like much of an advantage, but it's, again, I don't know how many times I'm going to use the word playable, but it's all playable. And then yeah, the repertoire goes into takes E4, which is the main move for white. Black goes Queen E7. I was looking at this position a little bit. Queen E2, B6. Then I think the rec is to go bishop A3, knight C5, knight C3. And yeah, I was looking at this a little bit, you know, bishop B7, rook 81, rook 88. To me, it felt like black should be more or less fine here. But okay, this is just one line out of many. So I mean, I just kind of compared it to like what I would play in the King's Indian, and this is probably where we would meet up. But overall, I do like the repertoire. I think the B3 stuff is pretty. I don't know if it's like unpleasant, but white has some nice ideas here, and it obviously makes a lot of logical sense just to put both bishops on the long diagonal. It's a very like harmonious setup, and so it has a lot of value, I think, for white in the long run. Hey, Dr. Matt, after DE there, I think there's knight G4. This is supposed to be good for black. Yeah, takes, takes, and I think we're okay. Black is accepting double pawns there. Yeah, I saw some lines. There might be like knight a4, but this one also hangs the e4 pawn, so it's like it gets kind of concrete here. I don't know. I have to go in with the engine pretty deep to like fully figure this one out. Oh, knight d3. Oh, I see, Dr. Mad. That's a good... Right, that's a good point. Take, queen f6. Boom. Boom. So this is one option for black. I also am interested in just playing like a5 in this position, which I think is kind of a trendy way. I saw a lot of players playing like this recently from black's point of view. So this one might be the trendier option. Not sure how much you'll see a5 at lower levels in this position, but yeah, to me it looks kind of interesting. You just play a4, c6, queen c7, and then one day maybe try to play for e5. So this one is definitely playable too. But yeah, overall the repertoire I think is not easy. Like if we're playing against a King's Indian player who doesn't have a ton of experience, doesn't really know what they're doing here, yeah, they might suffer a little bit. But at the same time, in a lot of these positions, white gets like a small advantage. And so you, of course, are still going to have to capitalize and try to like use the space advantage and convert on that. So I would say this is like very low risk for white, pretty low reward, but not so low that it's like not worth it. I think there are a lot of cases where white ends up much better in these lines if black kind of messes around too much with like knight a6. I think c5 is pretty theoretical, but I don't think a lot of players are going to be really familiar with these types of positions, and they might end up suffering in this thing. Is b3 a5 directly any good? It's interesting. Yeah, this is what we were... Is this what we were just looking at? Oh, I'm sorry, I played with knight d7 first. Yeah, even here, I think this is actually the way they've been playing it without knight d7. Just here, a5. Just forcing white to do something about a4. Yeah, very flexible way to play this for black. Because then you have different options like c6, queen c7, or knight a6. Even I think I saw some game with a4, knight c6. But the way I would actually play this one, actually I remember looking at a game here between the two Maximes, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave playing white against Maxime Lagarde, who's also really strong French GM. Lagarde as black played b6 here, which I thought was really interesting. Bishop b7, and then was basically fine. If white played c4, he could have played knight a6, e6, knight b4. He like controls this square. I personally would really enjoy this position as black, but okay, against a5, I don't think a4 is white's best option necessarily, but this is kind of a pretty interesting idea. Hey, Premier Chess, thanks for the raid. Welcome in, guys. Can I get you a drink? We're actually finishing up with the opening lab here. So hopefully, Jason, that helps you out. In general, yeah, the keep it simple stuff Mitch says is like pretty low risk, low reward, which I think is absolutely fine for repertoire. I think that's definitely a legitimate way to play. Yeah. Finishing up only to start a game analysis. I don't know. I was thinking about doing some puzzle grind. Yeah, I haven't done my puzzle grind today. So let's load it up. Let's do it.